Hi YouTube family, it's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. Today I am bringing you one of my trash to treasure, my thrift store flips. My channel I do lots of thrift store flips, furniture flips, and I share with you the process of how I get items, these thrifted items, ready to resell. And then I resell them locally here in an antique mall. So on today's video in my trash to treasure thrift store makeovers, I am bringing you 4 of these architectural wall decor type pieces. There's so many elements in this piece that I like, but I'm just not a fan of the colors. So for $7.09, I was excited to get to flip this one. Now this piece has been a long time coming. If you watched one of my thrift with me's, I've been holding on to this, and this is time to get this star shutter done and get it into the Farmhouse Decor. And this one was $6.09 at a Goodwill, but I absolutely love the primitive look of it, but I just want to turn it into farmhouse. And then taking off this fabric will definitely just change the complete look of this. And then of course adding up some new hardware. And I fell in love with this piece as soon as I saw it. I just loved all the elements. I'm not a fan of the coral, and I can't really see it as a coat rack. So I was definitely excited to make this one over too. This more of an architectural decorative piece that I see. I'm not sure what you see. Everybody's vision is different. And at the $8.09 price tag, I definitely thought I could make my money back by flipping this piece. And definitely I am not a fan of this type of 2-piece trying to figure out how to get your screws or nails in your wall level. So definitely be changing that hardware out too. Now remember, this is a thrifted piece. It's nothing about the wording. I know I take a little slack sometimes when I am upscaling signs. Remember, it is an unwanted piece. Somebody did not love it. And my vision for this piece is just a simple architectural piece, just to add a pop of decor to somebody's home, especially when we live in an area that we can't always find salvage pieces. Sometimes it's nice to have the reproductions just to look like you have a little bit more of an antique, primitive farmhouse home. And sometimes I really wonder if people donate the pieces because of these 2 types of hanger systems. It is really a pain to have to try to hang these. So I'm going to start right off with removing this fabric on the back of this star shutter. It's not my taste, but these little staples were definitely in there, so I'm definitely happy that I had a staple removing tool and then these other little grabbing nippers to grab these staples out. And then I'll be flipping all these pieces over and making sure that I'm going to be removing any of the hanger system. Like I said, I'm not a fan, and I will be replacing those. So it probably seems funny to start off with the back of the pieces, but for me, the back of the pieces matter just as much as the front when I am reselling. So now I can flip these over, and I'm going to be removing all the hardware. I want to be able to paint these pieces separately and then change them if I want to. So for this piece, I just cannot imagine this type of architectural decor being a coat rack. So I am definitely going to be removing the hinges, and then I'm going to be removing this star so I can paint it separately or leave it rusty. I'm not really sure yet. So for a few of these pieces, I feel like the backs are in perfect shape. There's no reason to waste paint and paint the back of them, but just to keep that crisp line, I'm going to go ahead and tape the back side of these pieces off. But for this piece, since it is coral on both sides, I will be painting that back. So since I'm going to be painting these pieces and I'm just filling in some screw and nail holes, I'm just using a little bit of spackle. I like this pink spackle that turns white when it's dry, because then I know when I can go to sand it. So for this signage piece, I am going to be sanding the wording off completely, and then there's a crackling paint job on the top of this, so I definitely want to get this as smooth as I can, because if I go to paint this, you're going to see that those letters right through my paint job, and you're going to see that crackling. I guess if I wanted to keep the crackling, but I don't. I'm looking for a smoother finish. And then for this piece, I'll go in with the orbital sander as much as I can, and then I'll have to hand sand the rest of where I covered up those nail holes, but you can see how this spackling turned white when it was dry. And then I probably don't need to or have to sand this piece, but I already have the orbital sander out and it's right here anyway, so why not? So now I am prepped. I have hardware removed, holes filled in, any tags taken off, and now I'm on to cleaning these pieces with my KRUD cutter. I absolutely love cleaning with this piece. It's just a great prep. Even though I have sanded them, you want to get any grime, any grease, anything that might prevent your paint from sticking. So there's no rinsing needed. You can spray your piece or you can spray it on your rag. Just wipe it off and then let it dry before proceeding to paint. So for this piece, it is that press board, that MDF board, and I want to do a coat of my Rust-Oleum paint and primer in flat black. I just feel that this adheres to this type of material a little bit better, and that way I can keep this piece nice and smooth. And then for these 3 metal pieces, I'm going to go ahead and spray them with the Rust-Oleum also. I definitely love the way that the Rust-Oleum with the paint and primer one, how it adheres to metal items. So for the rest of these pieces, I am using this ready-to-use Walmart paint in a flat onyx. I absolutely love the color of this black, and I love how it adheres to my pieces that I am painting. So I'm just going to be brushing it on the rest of the pieces. And I know I get asked about my brushes, but I just buy from the dollar store or Harbor Freight $1 a brush. We never wash our brushes out. We just put them in a Ziploc bag. We have an extra refrigerator in our shop that we just put them in so then they don't get crusty or hard. And so when we feel like the bristles are all blown out, you know how they get that way when you've painted a lot of items, we just throw it away and open up a new brush. So remember, if you liked watching these kind of trash to treasure, these thrift store makeovers, please remember to subscribe to my channel. That just helps me know that you like this kind of content and that I will keep making videos similar to this. So for the items that I have sprayed with that Rust-Oleum spray paint, I'm going to seal and protect that paint using some Polycrylic. This is just a great for that metal that's going to add longevity, and then for that MDF board, it's just going to seal that paint in. The spray paint just acts a little bit differently than this paint that I'm using from Walmart. So I've already painted the back side of this black, so now I'm proceeding to the front, and I'm really trying to get into the grooves because when I have my finished product item all done, I don't want to be able to see any of that coral. The idea for this piece is for it to be white so I can see all that beautiful detail. So now I'm using my Kills paint and primer in the flat white, and I'll give it a few coats. And I'm using that same Kills paint and primer in the flat white for this decor piece also. Just what I have envisioned is that these are pieces that are reproductions of old architectural pieces taken out of an old farmhouse. So that is why I'm choosing to paint them all white. This is just a look that I like. And if you are flipping at home, you can paint with whatever color you like. And then the same for these 2 pieces, I will be using that same Kills paint and primer. And then these 2 pieces will just be getting 2 coats because I'm going to end up heavily distressing these just the way that this little board is with the decorative molding on it and the star. Just I had envisioned of heavily distressing them with the orbital sander. So 2 coats of white will be plenty. So I've had so many responses of people enjoy watching people paint. It's relaxing to them. but I'll do just a little quick tutorial on the painting of the second coat on these pieces. So for this metal piece, I'm giving it just a couple coats of the Kills also, because I'm going to be distressing so you can see all those details, but I like it to be heavily distressed. I just want this to really look aged. So unlike a lot of the items we do where we just distress the edges, this is fun because I get to go in with the orbital sander and really work this orbital sander to get the paint off, touch on those edges and get it down to the natural wood and down to that black paint. So this is a little bit more of not my OCD type of sanding, but I do love certain pieces just cry for more distressing than others. And then for me, I use this multi-tool with the sanding corner triangle in it because that orbital sander I can't get right, because it's round, I can't get right into these flat edges. So I just use this little multi-tool with the sanding bit, and then I can get those a little bit more distressed. So now I need to flip this piece over and remove that tape because I'm going to need to sand off where that paint has dried against the tape. It's always hard and crusty, and I don't like that feeling, so I always like to sand it off, and especially I don't even know maybe that it would scratch up somebody's wall. Now I want you to be able to tell that this was a shutter, that there's two pieces, and some of that paint ran in the little cracks where the two pieces were put together. So I'm just taking my utility knife and just working it so that you can see and removing some of that paint that had dripped in there. So now I get to do the same thing with this little guy. I get to take the orbital sander and just get this nice and distressed. And I know you're thinking you're going to be putting that piece of metal back on there, but it's just easier just to paint the whole thing. And then to give this molding a little bit more distressing, I'm just going to flip it upside down, and then I'm just, why not, because I have the multi-tool of the sandy piece on it anyway, and I don't mind that it gets heavily distressed. And then the same thing, I'll remove that tape and then sand off that crusty edge that it leaves behind. Now, since this piece is metal, that paint is just laying on top of that, I definitely don't want to take the orbital sander, or I'll have a nice shiny piece of tin. So I'm just taking some 220 sandpaper and then just going to town and hitting all those raised edges and showing up all this beautiful detail. Now for this piece, I am going to go in and I'm going to detail the edges using my 220 sandpaper by hand. Like I said, this is a particle board, the MDF board, and so it will just sand way too fast with the orbital sander if I try to touch on the edges. So I'm just going to have to hand sand it, work my muscles. And then, yes, if you were wondering, did I tape off the back of this one too? Oh, my OCD gets the best of me, and I just cannot. I want my backs to look just as good as my front. So I'm removing the tape and sanding that sharp edge too. So for this piece, I did end up doing a little of both. I wasn't really sure when I started to hand sand it if it would show the coral that was underneath, and maybe that was a chalk paint, I'm not sure, because I really didn't have any problem when I started to sand it. I was able to see that black and see some of the natural, so I did go actually in and use my multi-tool sanding bit too, just to get a little bit more heavily distressed. So now I'm just going to blow these pieces off using the air compressor, because boy was there a lot of sanding dust left behind. Now to seal and protect these pieces, I am using the Varathane finishing wax, and I can only find this at Home Depot. I've gotten questions, does this yellow my paint? Nope, this is in the natural. I absolutely love how this protects it. I love the smell of it. I just love how it leaves my objects just nice and silky smooth. And this is a wipe on and then just wipe off any excess. So did you all wonder if I was going to be replacing that fabric on that star? And were you wondering, was I going to do some grain sack? Well, if you guessed that, then you guessed right. If you are new to my channel, I absolutely love to do grain sack striping. To say that I'm obsessed, yep, I'm obsessed. So I am using a piece of drop cloth linen. That is what I use for all my reupholstering. And this piece is actually a piece that was tea stain, coffee stain dye that I had left over from a previous project. And then I just use a masking tape that I get from the dollar store to make my stripes. And then the apple barrel multi-use paint that I get at Walmart. And then I apply it with a makeup sponge that I get from the dollar store. And my obsession with grain sack striping is probably because you can do whatever your heart desires, whatever is visually appealing to you. So all I did was kind of eyeball a spot on the fabric where I was pleasing to me, and then I just want to make little stripes because it's just a little star. And this is the reason that I love to use the Dollar Tree masking tape, because as you see, I centered my piece of tape over that first stripe that I did, and I can see where my center is. I can see right through it, so I don't really have to necessarily measure, because grain sack striping is that perfectly imperfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. So now I'm doing a stripe on either side. I'm doing just 3 stripes here, and so I'm just eyeballing what I think it looks completely even. But then again, yep, it's that perfectly imperfect of grain sack striping, and then I'm just running that paint down. So now here's the tricky part. I got my 3 stripes, and now I need to figure out how to keep it centered in that star. So what I'm doing is I'm just taping that fabric, because I did have a big piece of fabric, and just taping it over and making sure that it's secure, so then when I flip it over, then I can start stapling it onto the back. So now I'll just feel for where that star is and staple it, just following the guide of the stars, and then I'll just go and cut the excess fabric off. So I really wanted to like keeping this star rusty. I really like the rusty stars, but I did not think that this rusty star did anything for that white. So I'm just using some Waverly in the ink chalk paint just to coat this to get it covered. So when I took this metal piece off, it was mostly glued and puckered. So we needed to make some new holes to screw it back into place. So that's what Chris is doing. He's just getting it screwed in place, and then he's going to be drilling some holes to make sure that it's good and tight. And then to finish all these, we do add hangers to the back of them. I want a complete piece that somebody can take home and hang right onto their wall. And like I said, I am not a fan of that 2 hanging system. So we get these little hangers from Amazon. I think we get 100 at a time. And then Chris will attach wire. That way you don't have to try to level out 2 screws or 2 nails in your wall. You can just put 1 and then get your new decor piece hung. So all that hidden detail I felt was all hidden in all these muted colors of this decorative piece. So I definitely loved upcycling it and doing it in white, and then having that black underneath. It would just show the detail. And I actually put that other piece down at the bottom because I can actually see somebody maybe even hanging a little wreath off this. So I can barely remember this piece being burgundy with that aqua, I'm going to call it aqua spotted fabric. I definitely do not think that that did this beautiful shutter justice. I absolutely love that I could heavily distress it, and I love the grain sack striping on it. I think this is more of the farmhouse primitive decor piece that somebody in my area would be looking for. And though this was a nice sign, I just love the detail of this piece, and I just wanted it to be plain Jane. I guess you can call me a plain Jane, but sometimes just little bitty decor pieces that are just simple just say a lot. And if I could say I love you, and when we first met, I would have said this to this piece. I just love everything about the architectural design, how fun this piece is, though I never could envision it as a coat rack, but I definitely love how it pops now, how we just see all that different molding, all that different wood grain. And the star, I just absolutely love the star in black. And in my area, somebody is definitely going to love this piece. So I thank you so much for watching today's video, and what did you think of my thrift store flips? Are these items that you would have stayed away from, or have I inspired you to look at items in another way? And if you'd like to give me a quick comment of what you thought and give me a thumbs up, I'd so appreciate it. And if you're part of my YouTube family, I'd like to thank you just by you watching my videos and giving me a quick, nice, kind comment and a thumbs up. Lets YouTube know that you like this kind of content. And if you're new to this channel, please consider hitting that subscription button along with the notification bell so you know when I've uploaded a new video.